So again, I start everything from the terminal. So let me just back up a little bit. This is from my demo yesterday, doing Angular stuff. So again, just changing directories around, looking at what's in the directory, making sure I'm going to the right place. And then I'm going to make a directory, and I'm just going to call that Ajax demo directory. Oops, cancel that. Go inside of that folder, and then start up Atom. Actually, I'm going to turn off Atom first, and then I'm going to restart it because I have a whole bunch of other background stuff going on in the background. So, all right. Cool. All right, so let's just start off and talk about build ourselves out a very simple HTML file. I almost always start my HTML files as index.html. Index in general is like the main place you're going to start with. And if you're consuming an API of any sort, that index is going to load all the information from that API often. Not always, but that's kind of, index is like load all, as well as kind of your first page that you see a lot of times. All right, so HTML. And inside of our body, let's just put a div with an ID of main. All right. So this main div is what we're going to be loading, or where we're going to be loading all of our stuff. All right. I'm going to throw a couple more things at you guys to extra confuse you. So I think everybody installed Node because everybody's trying to do script stuff with Atom. Is that correct? Okay. So there are a number of other package managers that are kind of useful. So Node has a package manager called Npm. And when you install Node, you also install Npm. It just automatically happens. So another one is called Bower. And Npm and Bower and some of the other main package managers kind of compete. Actually, we'll just use Npm. It's fine. So if you guys want, and you guys can totally follow along with this. This is meant to be followed along. But if you do Npm Install Jquery, and then, yep. Let's see what happens. So I'm in the Ajax demo folder. Oh, let's see if I successfully did that. Yeah, okay. So now I have, notice this new folder just popped up, this node modules folder. Inside of that node modules folder, I now have a jQuery folder. And this is a way to prevent you having to go to the CDN every time for jQuery. Yeah.
Is this just a way of speeding it up? Locally caching it essentially?
Yep, exactly. And inside that jQuery folder, there's a dist. So it's just the distribution. And inside that distribution, there's jQuery, Minified jQuery. So anybody know the difference between minification and non-minified code? Compressed and...
That's all.
Okay, so let's just take a quick look at this. It's going to take Atom for a second to load this up because Atom's not super good with big files and jQuery is fairly large. But so notice like you have all these nice comments in the normal jQuery version, and like the functions are readable. Like var document equals window.document. That makes sense, right? So slice equals array.slice. All those things kind of make sense. Now, let's look at the minified version. Ready?
Because all like matter.
So, not only is it all the white space is removed, all the comments are removed, but also all the variables get changed from things that are normal names to like A, B, C's, and D's. So, anyways, when you minify something, it makes it a little bit faster to run because that code still has to be interpreted because JavaScript interprets line by line. And so by removing all that white space, even though it's white space, the interpreter still actually looks at that white space and be like, oh, white space, oh, white space, oh, white space. So it just speeds things up a little bit. So anyways, when you're developing, most people use the non-minified version because if you see an error, a lot of the errors actually have comments and information about the error. And once you're actually doing something for production, you switch it to the minified version. Cool. All right, so let's just load that script. So the source is going to be jQuery, or sorry, node modules. And I'm just basically following through this whole path. So node modules, jQuery, dist, jQuery.js. So it's nice to have a local copy of jQuery around. Just that way, if the internet goes down and you're developing, like if you're on the plane or something and you want to play around, you can just load that up rather than being like, oh man, nothing's working anymore. So, cool. All right, and the first thing I do, just to make sure everything's working, whenever I'm using a JavaScript method, I just console log, well, set up my document, and in the callback function, so this function here, this inner one of document.ready, is a function that runs as soon as jQuery sees the document being ready. And it's, in terms of parlance for JavaScript, it's called a callback. So it says, hey, I'm done with this, and then I'm going to run this internal function. And inside that internal function, I want to make sure that it runs. So I want to say console log anything, whatever, hello. Cool. Just run that just to make sure that everything's functioning. And there's our hello. So looks like jQuery's up, and my script is going to work fine. Cool. So let's just add another script source. I like to keep my scripts separate. So we'll call this a main.js file. Rather than having all of my JavaScript on like one giant page on my HTML page, I just load multiple files. So I'm going to get rid of this one. And just right-clicking on my tree, new file, main.js. And I'll shove in that document ready again. So hopefully none of that's too strange. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some Ajax calls. So this brings up a couple of different ideas that I kind of want to talk about. So the first one, we talked about it once, is this kind of response and request cycle idea. So where basically a client makes a call to a web page, like if you go to Google, that gets picked up by the DNS servers. It goes to the nearest Google server because they're all spread out all over the world. The Google server says, okay, I found some information, and then it sends that back to the client, right? And so how it does that is it does a GET request. So if we went to Google, you would say, like, if we search something like, what's a good thing? GitHub. So notice this search up here. So it went to Google, and then you have this question mark, and it says, oh, it came from Chrome. And then this queue here, this is what the query is, and the query is GitHub. All right. Notice you can see all of this stuff in the browser, right? So in the header. That is the request, and it's a type GET request. So when you made those forms, if you like auto-filled a form, I think you guys did that yesterday. Some of you did that for like the form for advanced jQuery stuff. The form automatically fills with this method of post, and you can choose between a method post or a method get. This is a get, and it will show everything up here. A post will like basically wrap it in an envelope and hide all the internal pieces of it. In order to consume most APIs, you're going to be throwing gets at them. So you're saying, hey, server, I want to get something from you. So one of those servers that we're going to get stuff from is the GitHub API, and that's what we're going to play around with today. So most APIs are prefixed with API, and then this one's just API github.com, users, and then me. But if we could do somebody else, Phil, what's your user?
All lowercase, it's Phil.
So now Phil's information comes up. So notice how this stuff is structured, right? So it has a curly brace. It has a key, a colon, and then a value. So this is a JavaScript object. It's actually JavaScript object notation. But if you bring something back from an API and it has JavaScript object notation, it's really easy to do stuff with that. All right. So let's just try and go get that. So what we're going to use is Ajax. Oops. And there's different ways to do it. The way I like to do it in jQuery is actually use the $.ajax method. What this takes is it actually takes an object as its parameter. So an object is denoted by curly braces, and then it has key value pairs inside of it. So if we're going to go to this website and bring it back to our page, what sort of method might we want to do that with? So if it gets typed in up here, we're going to use a get method. And we can tell Ajax to do that. So we say method get. Each key in the object is separated by a comma. The next thing we want to do is, where are we going to get stuff from? And so, what is this called? Just in general?
URL.
Yep. So we add another key value pair to this object and say URL and whatever the URL actually is. So we just copy that thing on. And then, just to keep things simple, all we need to do next is say, what do we do with this thing when it gets information back? And that's just success. And success, its key generally takes a function. So function, an anonymous function generally, and stuff returned is the argument that gets passed in there. So you can call this whatever you want, like data or fill information, whatever. I usually go with data for just generic. So that's the data that comes back. And let's just console log that data to see what happens. All right, so if we type it in, we get this, right? If we make an Ajax request, we're doing exactly the same thing, but it's going to go and hopefully console log on our index page. All right. So notice what shows up in our console log now? This object that has all that awesome information in it. You get awesome information. All right. So now we can do stuff with that. So if we wanted to add it to our page, shouldn't be too hard. How do we add stuff to our document? If we wanted to add something to this main div, for example, using JavaScript and jQuery. Yeah, and what do we have to do first?
Call it.
So we've got document ready up here, so that's all set.
It has an ID, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was the term I was looking for. Perfect. So we have to get the selector. And so we have a couple of options for selectors. We have div as a selector, possibly. We could have had body as a selector. But in this case, we wanted to go after just this very specific div and the one with the ID of main. Then we can append something onto that, so sticking something inside of it. And we can stick on data dot, well, what sorts of things do we have in here? Well, we can get Phil's ID, we can get his login, we get, where's your blog, Phil? Jeez.
Can we get his avatar, gravatar thing and then display it?
We could, if he had one.
Up, right? Oh, I saw an image up there. Is his profile picture probably? Yeah. Is up there? Oh, that's the URL, yeah.
Yeah, so we should be able to get that. So notice this, let's do something a little bit simpler before we do that, because this is another HTTP call. Let's just get his username. So login. So you can access objects multiple ways. So you can either use dot notation, which is kind of the classical way of using objects, and so most languages will access key value pairs using dot. But you can also use square braces and then put the key in brackets. So let's just take a look at that. We'll do it both ways just to kind of confirm. So notice how it's taking a little bit of time and then it pops up? That's the asynchronicity. So we're just basically sitting there waiting to do it, and then if other things were happening on the page, those would happen just fine, and Phil would eventually pop up. Cool. So again, data.login, we would also do the exact same thing. And again, let's watch the timing of this. So when we refresh the page, oh, that was faster. Fine, whatever. There. All right. Cool. All right, so now Thomas had an idea of maybe trying to go get something else from it. So maybe get this gravatar image, right? So notice that this is another HTTP request. So that's going to take time. That's going to go out to another server and bring something back. So we want that to also load asynchronously. And we can only get that information after we've done this initial Ajax call. So what would we have to do in here? We'd have to make another internal Ajax call to it. So that's not too bad. So again, it's the exact same setup. And I'm just going to give some spacing to it just to kind of clarify. Internal Ajax call. Obviously, you wouldn't absolutely have to do this, but if you want different pieces of your page to load dynamically, this would be the way to do it. We could just say, oh, let's do it, and then it would wait to see it done before it did anything else.
So if you don't do this internal, it would wait until it grabbed the image, and then it would load both the login and the image.
It would, in this case, it would do this line, so that would work fine. And then anything after this line, if we put the direct call, because it's a blocking event. Yeah.
So in the case of this, when you're using Ajax, you want it to be probably pretty high, right? Because everything's going to read synchronously in JavaScript until it reaches the Ajax call.
It can be where, yes, I mean, just get it started early would be better than starting it late. Yeah. And did that make sense as to what the question was? So Josh was basically saying, if we start these Ajax calls and these asynchronous behaviors as early as we can, then the rest of our page should load. Like we get those going, and then that will bring the information from those. Send the information out to the remote server, and the rest of our stuff will happen, and then it will bring it back. Versus load the rest of our stuff, start a request to the remote server, and then bring it back. All right. So let's make another internal Ajax call. Again, same exact setup. So the Ajax method of jQuery, internal object, a method, and that method is going to go to or be a get still. It's going to have a URL, and now we can use this data property to get that URL. So data dot whatever this thing is, which is avatar underscore URL. And then the last thing, we want something to happen on success. Function, again, it can just take data. But we could say image if we wanted to. And let's see. Let's just console log that image. And there's our image.
That's pretty exactly like the logged it right.
Yep. So it actually brought back the image file for us. It's the entire file. So it's probably easier just to let our image tag do that work for us. So rather than doing what I just did, since it's actually coming back as a PNG. And let's go like this. So notice I'm using kind of weird quotes. So I'm using a backtick. And this is going to allow us to basically build out our HTML pretty cleanly using, I don't know, whatever, something. But using variables, sorry. So with backticks, you can call a variable inline. And so we can say data.avatar_URL as the source. And then basically it's just $, and then grab whatever you want. And the alt equals filatar. Right. So that's an ES6 feature, but it's been implemented on most major browsers. If any of you are running like Internet Explorer like 10, it's not going to work for you. But hopefully if you're doing that, you're not here. So, all right. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Nice. So make sure that's closing. That's closing there. That's the closing one for there. And so how I'm figuring out closing tags, I'm just looking, and there's a little yellow line underneath my curly brace, and then it has a matching yellow line somewhere else on the page, which is right there. So if people haven't figured that out already. All right. There we go. Cool. All right. So today's assignment for this morning, this afternoon I'm going to let you guys kind of get caught up on other things if you want to play with more jQuery or whatnot. What the goal for today is to make a form where you can type in somebody's username and then return this.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
if you want to start off by returning Phil's picture, that's totally fine. But eventually make it so that you can pass in other information. So
we can pick any API we want and then just do this.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're posting this video on Slack, right?
it'll take me a second because I'll have to push it up to YouTube. And I'll send you guys. I'm happy sending off this code too.
Cool.
So as I said, so I'm just going to write the assignment on the very top of this. Goal. Use a form. Well, and you don't. It doesn't even actually need to be a form. You can cheat around that if you want to.
Oh, is this how that's how GitHub specifies.
jQuery
So what?
and Ajax to dynamically
So basically,
add GitHub
something
info.
here, right?
And ideally, add that below your form.
So you want it to show up on the same page?
Yeah.
Just below.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Cool.
Oh, yeah. It's looking for a source.
And just to know, if you do something like this, submit. Whoops, that's not my. So submit is a way to submit a form. So it basically takes the action of the form and does stuff with it. If you do prevent function e, and then e dot, so e is the event that's actually submitting it, so it's this submit event. And submits by default will refresh the page, so you have to say prevent default. The other way to do it is return false. So if you use form submit, let's see, I'm just say if you use form submit,
Mike, what other things does that event object have that you're passing through as a parameter in the form?
in which one? The event object? It depends on what event it is. But it has, we'd have to look at it. So we can console log e and check it out. I don't remember all of it.
Is the event just a way of giving it a name versus calling it as this? Or are they different?
This refers to the element that's been selected, whereas the event is the actual thing that's getting the actual triggering of process.
So E is the submit.
So the action of submitting is E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What would that show up as if you looked at it like an object?
Let's do that. And let me make sure I've got everything still working. Oh, forms automatically refresh.
Isn't there gonna be an unexpected identifier though, the form?
Well, we're gonna fix
Gonna
that.
make it form?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright. Alright. And I'm going to put an action on here. And the action is going to go to just to show that it doesn't refresh even though it tries to. I think that'll work. Actually, I'm going to put no action on it. All right. So here's our button. There's our fill. Did I? Oh. There. Okay. So there's the event. So let me just scroll up. Whoa. So it has all these different things. Depending on what type of event it'll have some of those things filled in or not. So it's not the actual element that gets submitted. Whereas, like if you looked at this, that'd be the form. Whereas the event is actually, as I said, it's the actual verb and how jQuery picks up that verb.
It's the action, right?
Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think that should set you guys up to give that a shot. So, you know, again, just like everything, it's great to collaborate with people. My personal learning style is I like to try to figure stuff out on my own and then before I talk to somebody. So I would recommend that, but I know that's not how everybody learns. So if you're, you know, sitting next to somebody that you get along with great and you're like, oh, you know, I love how you explain things to me and they like how you explain things to them, you can start off working together. So, cool. So I'll Slack this over and I'll Slack the video over when it's done. Cool. Yeah. Here's my stop.